Army Remembrance Day is the anniversary of the first military coup in Nigeria and the end of the Nigerian Civil War. Well, since those ugly events, Nigerian leaders have focused on deepening national unity and enhancing commitment to democracy. Well, some institutions like the National Youth Service Corps as well as the National Orientation Agency were established to drive national unity and nationalism. Well, the question is, how well has these institutions performed, and are we more united and patriotic now than in 1966? What can we do really to achieve the desire of our founding fathers for a country united in justice, prosperity and peace?
All right, Arise analyst Dr. Sam Amadi joins us to look at this issue and what the country needs to do to strengthen the unity of the country. Very warm welcome and happy Armed Forces Remembrance Day. It's a sober reflection always when you think of, those who safeguard our lives and paying the supreme sacrifice, for keeping Nigeria together. 53 years after, that reconciliation, that peace, that unity of purpose, are we meeting those objectives as a country?
I think first we have to say that the armed forces as an institution and the armed forces, they are one of those things that unite us as a country. So they have become icons of our nationhood. And so this moment provides us opportunity to reflect and thank God for little misses that we are still a country united. If you consider that the Civil War itself and the first military coup, which was one can say, from in hindsight, it's not a mistake. In those days it was very fashionable to have people, military rule across from Cuba when the great Fidel Castro took over. That was just fashionable, recreate the nation across Africa. You see so many of those schools in Congo and down to Nigeria,
even to Latin America.
To Latin America. It was a fashionable thing. But looking back, it was a major problem. It distorted us, it disoriented us. The lessons we ought to have learned is that we should have taken more seriously what unites us and less what divides us. So one can argue that looking back, maybe we survived, but we didn't quite, learn the lessons. It was a failure of leadership collectively as a people. Nigeria came to the scene in 1960 with great hope. The Time magazine reported Nigeria cover, so this is Africa's glory. It didn't take up to 4 years. We're into stormy water. And
the entire glory was shattered.
And now we are still struggling.
Right.
So looking back, one can say, what did we do to get ourselves, go on after the war, declared the
3 hours.
3 hours.
No
reconciliation,
victor,
reconstruction and all that.
And rehabilitation.
Some have argued that we are half-hearted in pursuit of that. Okay, the NYSC came up as a response to allow us to see the good of our place. So when they send you from a young person from, let's say, Edo State and send it to Borno, you probably had imaginary ideas.
Yeah.
But there you confront hospitality, humanity, you see the oneness. So you go back to your area, you say, look, these are our brothers and sisters, they are wonderful.
Some didn't even bother returning back again, and they remained there.
Business, absolutely. In fact, some of our uncles who were coppers decided a law practice in the north, business in the north, and they flourished. You will hear oftentimes when someone like Atesa says the north made him. That's the idea. But you see, they want to call positive reinforcement. When you come out of that, I enter Nigerian public service, and they continue to ask about their ethnicity, and they continue to
the federal character stuff,
So it dilutes that notion. So over time, we discovered that maybe what I saw when I went to Brown or when I went to Owerri, it's actually a facade. The real Nigeria is the one that disorganized. So with the failure of the NYSC, that yes, essentially makes sense, but then we don't, now people opt out. Those, if you're rich, say in Abuja, saying people even do their NYSC in their village, in their community. So gradually it lost the essence. Now look at National Intelligence, great idea to also post-Civil War, to say you can't build a country without some civic consciousness. A country is an imaginary, it's a narrative. The American dream, or our nation, the French citizenship. Without stories, without trying to create a sense of a mythology of oneness, if you like, you can't be a nation. So the audition said, okay, we're going to make sure that Nigerians understand this history in a way that favors oneness and unity. But Jenny Garage did a great deal with Mamsa. But
yes.
today, that agency is not being funded.
Okay.
Well. So that's really the problem, that we've taken one step forward and
several steps
backwards.
Dividing ourselves and undermining even the little symbolic things we've achieved as a nation.
Well, Dr. Sam Amadi, while we'll talk about January 15th, we cannot forget the fact that the Civil War did end in the year 1970, this day. And of course, it was reported about 3.5 million people lost their lives in that incident. And let's not forget the reason why that war even happened in the first place. A particular geopolitical zone still feels the same way they felt that way, some would argue, because the clamor for Biafra is still loud, and some would say even getting louder by the day. So I ask you again, do you think the lessons from that war was actually something that we have been able to internalize to better this nation, Nigeria? Or if not, what should we be doing?
I think the answer is yes and no. For example, not up to a decade after the war, we saw an Igbo man as a vice president on a ticket, Equipment Shagari. That was a golden moment of reconciliation and inclusion, if you like. But we also see, so we made progress in a sense. We've made some progress, we've seen some inclusion, and we've seen a sense in which there are some response. But what is missing now is that if you listen to people, listen to social media, you see some language that seems to revisit that incident in a bad way. Look, history is good. It's good to know what happened. It's good to talk about who did what, but not for the purpose of profiling the people or demonizing them. And that's why the President Buhari's statement on Twitter that led to our crisis was seen by some people as not really the kind of statement, even though he didn't mean it in that sense, but it came out coercive. So I think what has happened is that the Southeast still feel marginalized clearly. But you can also say that, look at the P2P movement, for example, that's Southeastern. That's a significant embrace from across Nigeria.
Embrace, but some parts of the Southeast are still insistent that there should be no elections in
Well, they're going to have
February
fringe characters. So, for example, the Ohanes and Dib and other visible leaders are saying, affirming Nigeria unity. There's something P2P tweeted today, which I like. He said, Nigerians, Igbos Southeast has always affirmed oneness. That's why we vote with our leg. That's why we're everywhere. But you're going to see people who are angry. That the response is this. Democratic citizenship. If you treat everybody just as a citizen of Nigeria, no matter where they come from, I think over time we're going to put behind these fringe characters become more fringe and more fringe, because you give them oxygen. When we see in the last 8 years, we've seen a very unreasonable statecraft that seemed to reinforce that sense of exclusion, either by appointment, either by statements, either by action. So, but if you have a state, is a deliberate construction. You have to deliberately build the deposit memory of oneness over time. Suddenly, Ojukwu said before he died, he said, Biafra had become an economic Biafra, emotional Biafra, no longer a physical Biafra. So we can actually defunk, we can reduce the velocity of this memory, that people could talk about Biafra in a comical, loving way, as a cultural recreation, without the fear and the threat of attack, because everything is normal. They feel integrated, they are happy. They don't see a sense of denial. So when Nigeria fails, that's the problem. People go to that. By the way, Odua nation is a strong phenomenon now. A nation fails, people retreat back to their home state. A nation succeeds, people forget where
they come from originally
and embrace the nation.
And that brings me to the question, that sense of history and sense of belonging, that of imbibing patriotism. Shouldn't we be having great monuments, to symbolize some of the warmth, the culturalness, the oneness of this great, great country? They seem to be absent.
You see, that's also, I say, deliberateness. For example, during the Civil War, or the first coup, we saw an example of Nzogo and the governor of Western Nigeria, Fajui, who created a bond.
A
great friendship, showed the triumph of common nationality and humanity over ethnic separation. Why don't you have a monument to attest to that Nigerianness? If you look at history, so we fail to moments of unity, to concretize it and make it attractive. You're right. There are many things that we should celebrate about this country. We have to, if you go to Abuja or Nigerian University, it doesn't tell a story about Nigeria. That's why I felt. So the fear of our past has now created a morbid loss of history. We are not, if you go to our cities, you don't see as if it's a Nigerian city. We have lost the moment. I was a member of I was a part of the U.S. Holocaust Museum colloquium many years ago. If you go there, all the names of people who died in the Holocaust
are written.
The details.
And I asked myself, why don't you have
Yes.
a Biafran memorial with names? You have to make history, domesticate history. And therefore, reduce the velocity and make it a human history. People come and watch the Biafran story, the films and cinematic effects, and go home and say, wow, this is what our parents did. And forgive themselves, reconcile, because you have now created history in a way it becomes a teacher.
Absolutely.
It's
Using the past to reconcile the present and make projection into the future.
Rather make it demonize and, you know.
Dr. Amadi, as we get ready to wrap up this conversation, that simple sentence, no victor, no vanquish, we're supposed to do something to Nigeria. Talk about unity. No one won in this war. It was, you know, we had a battle, but here we are. The war over, nobody won. So talk to me about unity and the desires of our founding fathers. A country, you know, where they said is united in justice, prosperity, and peace. How do we go back there?
Yeah, we failed to get there. We have to go there. And that reminds me of what Baldwin, the author, told about the U.S. He says, America has to become America. The dream of a Nigeria united is a dream that we have to walk through. But you can't carry that dream with all the contradictions. You have to first resolve the issue of nationality, who is a Nigerian. We have to move away from our ethnic configuration. It says there's something called Nigerian citizenship that trumps over ethnic religious affiliation. The state doesn't care who you are, it cares you're Nigerian. The second issue is state and religion. We have so much giving religion exceptionalism that religion is the sacred cow in the room, whether in terms of mainstreaming it, in terms of respect for religious officials. We need to be able to take religion away from the state. And thirdly, we have to go back to merit and, you know, ethical liberalism to say, look, Nigerian has to be a system run on merit-based process. Every Nigerian struggles to create value because every Nigerian receives value based on creation, not based on identity, not based on cultural or religious prerogative. If we continue to nurture our too much love for religion and tradition against citizenship and progress, if we continue to nurture prerogative and privilege against meritocracy, we can't get the Nigeria of our dream. Our forefathers largely failed, not their fault, because they thought they can carry the baggage of ethnicity, ethnocentrism, and the modern state, and they failed. We have to go back and recreate that foundation and abandon these ways. I know that a nation is like a jealous wife. It requires an intimate embrace, and that intimacy must cost you something. And
we must continue to embrace each other. That's what Associate Professor of Law, Arise News Analyst, Dr. Sam Amadi is telling us. Thank you very much.